who is focused on impact. I represent CIFOR, the Center for International Forestry Research, one of the co-organizers, and I also work for CIRA, the French Research Center on Agriculture and Development. I've been told that we had to tell stories and demonstrate, and based on that request by a lady, I will exhibit a total disregard for the questions posed by the chairman, and I hope the reasons for that will become clear at the end of the presentation. I will tell you one story of a 4 years research project we carried with different institutions, different partners in India, in the Western Ghats. And I will try to demonstrate why we had to focus at the landscape level to have the impact we wanted to have and to help as much as we could to ensure sustainable development could be an option, a viable option in the area where we were working. We started with very, I'm a forester and an ecology, I have a PhD in ecology and a degree in forest engineering. So we had an entry point which was very biophysical and very biological sciences. So we wanted to understand the dynamics between management systems, biodiversity, and the provision of ecosystem services. And for this, we worked in a district in India, in the Western Ghats, as you can see in the map. Well, the image doesn't look that good. It's a small district, 4,000 square kilometers, with 150 inhabitants per square kilometers. And it produces roughly 2% of the world's coffee, essentially under shade systems. What we have been dealing with is a very complex landscape mosaic with patches of natural forest, with coffee estates in very different, exhibiting very different levels of biodiversity and anthropization, and paddy fields, roughly 30% paddy fields, 30% coffee agroforestry system, 30% forest. We had huge conservation key points. There are flagship species such as the elephant and the tiger in this area. There are local populations. As I told you, the density is quite high, 150 per square kilometer. We had also cattle grazing in the forest, putting pressure on the resources and interacting with the wildlife. We had a major actor, which was the forest department, Karnataka Forest Department. That actor has a say on whatever happens in the forest, but also outside, as long as there are trees in the production system. We had also policymakers, researchers, we include ourselves here, developers. This complex system provides ecosystem services that are of interest locally, such as pollination for the coffee crop, but there is also the source of one river that gives water to Bangalore and the plains in Tamil Nadu. So we're talking about millions of people impacted by the ecosystem services provided in this area. We have practices, traditional knowledge, and public policies. And this complex system was what we were trying to deal with. And any person in his sane mind would call that a landscape. We couldn't agree on that. That's why we use a social and ecological system, which is a new word, but I put it to you that for me, social and ecological system is nothing but a landscape. We had an entry point, which was satellite imagery, and we wanted to document the dynamics of the land use change over 30 years. This is the image in 77, where you had in dark green, we had evergreen forest, light green, coffee estates, yellow, dry deciduous forest, and the whitish that you can see in the middle are the paddy fields. So this was the picture 77, then 20 years later, then just 4 years later. So as you can see, we could document a very massive change in land use cover. So that posed questions. So we went with our compass and our forestry knowledge and took a snapshot of the biodiversity, documenting the biodiversity in the forest fragments, in the coffee estates, in the various types of coffee estates. And we ended with an understanding of the of the dynamics of that landscape. We knew there were biodiversity changes, we knew what those changes were and had documented them. We also look at other issues that were still related to biology and biodiversity. But then we wanted to go one step further. We wanted to understand why was this happening like it was. And then we went through microeconomical analysis, through sociological analysis, through anthropological studies. We tried to understand the drivers behind the dynamics we had just described. We went even one step further, and we built a conceptual model transformed that into a companion modeling. Through participatory modeling, we transformed that into role-playing games, and we used that with the stakeholders to try first to validate our understanding of the system, and then to try out different scenarios for public policies. And actually the results were quite depressing, because we tried in one situation where business as usual, we would see that one exotic species was taking over a very biodiversity-friendly production system, and then we said, okay, we'll give you the rights. What happens? Then we see that the trend is still going further, that the more rights we were giving to the farmers, the faster would the transition happen. So we use this as a tool to build policies, and we are now in the phase where we are trying to engage the policymakers, taking into account all the results. We also had an outreach policy. We had, of course, a website where we would communicate our results, and as scientists that we were busy publishing articles in scientific papers. Now, then suddenly what happened? Somebody actually read our website and took objection. And then we found ourselves in the middle of a tug of war with the local stakeholders objecting to the research, then others taking a stand for us, saying, no, this is actually good research. So we, as researchers, were in the middle of a policy fight, which is where we actually wanted to. But I can tell you, I know how to deal with a reviewer. It's a very different thing to deal with a politician. In the end, after 4 years of research, we've tried to open all the boxes you see here. Now, if I had the opportunity to lock the doors and keep you hostages for hours, we would go through all of them. I will not do that. But just to highlight that we started with a very geophysical entry point, and we went out to policy aspects, proposing alternatives to the stakeholders, certification, payment for ecosystem services, fight for timber rights, and engage with them up to the arena of the policy level. So why did I want to tell that story? Essentially because it is my belief that it's only through the landscape level that we can first achieve that depth of understanding of the dynamics in the process. It's only at that level that we can develop such interdisciplinary approaches and such integrated understanding of the dynamics. I cannot say anything meaningful on the human-elephant conflicts in this area unless I understand the structure of the value chain, the relationships between labor and land tenure system. So I need this level of analysis to be able to make proposals that will actually work in the field. And therefore, it is not a surprise for me that the model forest has selected that level as an entry point to ensure sustainable management is a reality. Thank you.